Okay. Feel like I haven't been in here in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Johnny, for filling in.
You were sorely missed.
Well, I heard it went awesome. So thank you for filling in, and let me go for a couple of weeks and spend some time with Paul, and that was much needed for both of us, and I appreciate the opportunity to go do that. We are in Isaiah, and Johnny covered chapters 43, 44, 45 over the last 2 weeks, and we are ready then for chapters 46 and 47. And as we've talked about, this section of Isaiah here, chapters 40 through 55 cover, even though they're written by Isaiah, they're in reference to events that happened like 150 years after Isaiah's lifetime. So he's writing about these things way before they ever happened. And we have no problem with that because we don't mind talking about prophecy and understanding that God knows things before they're going to happen and all those things. And in fact, it enhances the story for us when we read later things like the historical account of King Cyrus being shown the scroll of Isaiah that mentions him by name, that he was going to be the one that sent the captives back, and those kind of things. So understanding that this is part of God's plan, that he unfolds these things well in advance of them actually happening, is not a problem for the way that we view Scripture, the way that we interpret the things that are going on. So Isaiah here is telling the people about a future time when they're going to be in captivity, and he is giving them some tools to be able to endure that captivity and to be able to get through that captivity and come out the other side of it. Because even though you know something bad's coming, it's still not good to go through it, right? It's still a bad thing to go through those things. But knowing that there's relief on the other side, and knowing that there is relief coming in the end, has to help the endurance of that thing. So that's kind of the purpose of God announcing these things that much in advance before they ever even happen. Always like to just kind of put us in the map where we're at. Of course, Isaiah is writing in the vicinity of Jerusalem at the time that he's writing these things, but Babylon is way over here. It's hard to do upside down over my shoulder. Over here is Babylon, and so I was looking at some other things today, some historical stuff and maps and things, and Babylon at the height of its power during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. Whoops, that button, yeah, that button. They owned a piece of land that went all the way up and around and down and all the way down south of I can't even go far enough down on the picture there to show what the area of land that they had control of. But they were the world power at that time. And so Isaiah is writing to people who are in captivity under the control of the greatest power in the world, telling them that it's going to be okay. You're going to come out the other side. And they have to endure some things, and they have to get their mind right. They have to get they have to figure out how to repent and how to change their ways. But it's going to be okay. And that's what Isaiah wants them to know in the end. There will be a remnant that returns. So the theme for tonight, the title of tonight's lesson is Babylon Does Not Work. Babylon, despite how great it is, despite their power, despite their advances that they make in things like culture and science and writing and astronomy and all of the sciencey stuff that we can talk about, that you can go back and tie into ancient Babylon making some very significant discoveries. Despite all that, Babylon is broken. It doesn't work. And God is going to bring them down very quickly despite their strength. And we're going to see that in today's lesson. So I'd like to start with a little review. We covered Isaiah 1 through 39 earlier this year, and that's the current the current people that Isaiah is living with, and he's writing to them about their current circumstances in chapters 1 through 39. Then we're in the midst there of chapters 40 to 55, and that's addressed to the exiles in Babylon. And then the last 10 chapters, 11 chapters there, 56 to 66, will be addressed to those who return from Babylonian captivity and live in that post-exilic world. So how do they kind of reform the nation that has been lost due to the captivity? We've talked about this over and over, that the people in Babylonian captivity fall into three categories. There are those who have assimilated into that Babylonian worldview, and they're going to be really on the firing block tonight. The chopping block, I guess, would be the phrase. Isaiah is really going to let them have it tonight, because those people who have adopted Babylonian way of thinking, and then to find out that the Babylonian way of thinking is not good, they're going to get their comeuppance tonight, kind of the things that Isaiah says to some of them. There are those who gave in to despair and just kind of threw their hands up in the air and figured that nothing matters anymore, because God couldn't fix it. God couldn't save them. He couldn't protect them. And so what's the point in even trying? And so there were those that gave into that mindset, and then there were those that were hopeful. And we're trying to get everybody into that category, right? It's not that we're giving up on categories 1 and 2. It's that we're trying to educate them and get them to the point of being hopeful. And so that's a big purpose of Isaiah's writing. The two central questions that are addressed throughout this section of Isaiah are, can God save, and does God care enough to save? And that really folds into those three attitudes that we see. Can God save? Does he have the power to be able to save us from what we're going through? And if he does have the power but just doesn't care about us enough to save us, then what good is he? And so not only can he do it, but will he do it? Does he care enough to do it? And so Isaiah addresses those two questions over and over again throughout this section of the book. So for tonight, if you have one of the handouts there at the back there, George, I bet can help you. If you don't have one and raise your hand, George can bring you one real quick. There we go. Thank you, George. Isaiah 46 explains the emptiness of Babylonian theology. So their view on God, which is not a good view, because they don't know the true God. They don't worship the real God. And so their view on God is skewed, and it's not going to get them very far. And then not only that, but their view on politics, how they express themselves politically, is also bankrupt. It's empty. And we're going to see the kind of the delineation between the two things that are addressed in each of the two chapters that we're covering tonight. So 46 will deal with that empty theology, and 47 will deal with the empty politics of Babylon. So these two chapters are directed to the Israelites who seem taken with Babylonian culture. And it's, I think, important for us to understand that Isaiah is not writing to correct the Babylonians, right? This is not a Jonah and Nineveh situation where Jonah goes into the foreign nation, into the capital city of Nineveh, and tries to correct that city and bring them to repentance. We're not trying to drive the Babylonians to repentance. In fact, the Babylonians are going to be punished because of the ways that they've acted. And so what Isaiah is trying to drive home is this message to the Israelites, that those of you that have adopted this Babylonian way of thinking, this Babylonian way of worship, this Babylonian culture, you have chosen the wrong side. You have chosen the wrong horse in this race. So Isaiah is really going to drive that point home in these chapters. Okay, so we are ready to jump into the text now. We'll look at the Babylonian parade, verses 1 through 4 of chapter 46. Mr. Harold Schenck comes up with some interesting ways of describing these different sections as he does this for this class. So chapter 46, verses 1 through 4, Bel has bowed down, Nebo stoops over. Their images are consigned to the beasts and the cattle. The things that you carry are burdensome, a load for the weary beast. They stooped over, they have bowed down together. They could not rescue the burden, but have themselves gone into captivity. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, you who have been born by me from birth, and have been carried from the womb. Even to your old age, I will be the same. And even to your graying years, I will bear you. I have done it, and I will carry you, and I will bear you, and I will deliver you. So, remember, what is the theme of chapter 46? The emptiness of Babylonian theology, right? And so, from the very beginning here, who are we addressing?
False gods.
Bel and Nebo. So Bel is the Babylonian, their chief god, and in some there are lots of names. Most of these kind of Syro-Phoenician, Mesopotamian regions, they all had the same gods. They all had different names for them, but they're basically the same gods. And another name that we would know Bel by is the name Baal. It's B-A-A-L. We've read about that over and over through the Old Testament. And Baal and Bel are the same character, the same god. Sometimes in Babylonian works, this god Bel is also referred to as Marduk, not Marmaduke from the cartoon that I was used to confuse that with when I was a little kid. But Marduk is also the same character, the same god, the same deity. And so Bel has bowed down. How do you feel about your God bowing? Is that something that we picture gods doing? Gods are not the ones that bow. Gods are the ones that are bowed to, right? And so starting off, I mean, just launching this first salvo is saying that Bel has bowed down. And then Nebo is Bel's son, the son of Marduk, the son of Bel, was named Nebo. And Nebo was the god of, specifically the god of writing, and the Babylonians had developed a very substantial alphabet form of writing. One of the earliest libraries ever found has been found in this region, and they had a very significant culture developed around writing, and it was the basis of this culture that they had, that they made all these tremendous advances in a short period of time, largely in part because they had developed a substantial written language. And so Nebo was their god of this sort of that developing culture. So Bel, their chief god, has bowed down. Nebo has stooped over. And so Isaiah starts off this section just by talking about the inadequacy of the Babylonian gods. Their images are consigned to the beasts and the cattle. They represented their gods with images. And when we think about idols, what's one of the primary idols that you think of from the Old Testament? The golden calf. When Aaron, formed that out of the gold that the people had given him while Moses was up on Mount Sinai. And so these gods that are represented by these physical, actual idols are no different than a picture of a cow or a picture of a beast. Just like a picture or a statue of a cow is not really a cow, a picture of a god, a statue of a god is not really a god. I mean, it's just not the same thing. And so, he's just starting off with this description of the way that they represent their gods, and he comes right out of the gate just kind of destroying it. Chuck?
It's funny, not funny, Bob, but strange how they come up with all these gods, like this god doesn't cover this situation, so we got to have another god.
Yeah.
And they come up with all these different scenarios. They got to have different gods for them. Like one of the times, was the Israelites were battling. I think it was the Assyrians, where they said, the reason why they won is because they're gods of the plains, and
Yeah. Our God is the God of the mountains. And so we need to lure him into the mountains so that we can defeat him. Yeah. And that didn't go well for him either. So yeah, you're right. They do have gods for every contingency. And even by New Testament times, Paul addresses that in Acts 18, I think, where he's in Corinth and or Athens rather, and deals with the unknown God. So this he entitles this section Babylonian Parade, and the imagery here is of Bel and Nebo bowed down, stooped over, and they're being carried. They're being helped along the way, and there are a couple of possible interpretations for it. One is that that they are being led on a parade, and the New Year's festival is the prominent time when they would these gods would be featured. It was at the planting of the barley at their New Year. That was their main crop, and so they would plant the barley, and during this time they would have a big festival, and they would actually take their statues of their gods and they would take them out of the place where they were normally parked, and they'd bring them to the temples, or they'd bring them to the central square, and all of these images of their gods would at one point during the ceremony be all taken into the temple so that the priests could bow and pray and honor them and all this. So they'd have all of these statues lined up outside the temple waiting to be carried into the temple, and then they'd be brought back out and taken back out to their various places where they would reside for the rest of the year. And so here you have these gods who are being carried around so that they can be worshipped, and that's just silliness. I mean, you have to take your God from one place to another so that you can worship him. And then the other possible interpretation that some have posited for this is that at the destruction of Babylon, when Babylon fell as a nation at the hands of Cyrus the Great, the Persian king, there are accounts of the priests taking their gods and evacuating the city, leaving the city and carrying their gods out because they didn't want the gods to fall into the wrong hands, you know. And so here you have the gods being taken into captivity, in a sense, by their own priests as they are being escorted out of the city ahead of Cyrus coming in. And so either way, that's not flattering for the Babylonian gods. That's a bad thing to be. And then contrast that with how God describes himself. The next verse is there. You who have been born by me from birth. So here we have these Babylonian gods that are being carried, but God is the one who carries. Jehovah God is the one who carries his people. You have been carried from the womb. So I don't need to be carried by you. I'm the one who carries you. Even to your old age, I will be the same. Even to your graying years, I will bear you. That's the picture that God paints of himself. And see how that ties into those two central questions that Isaiah deals with through the whole section. Does God care, and can God act? Well, he does care, and he does have the power. He points back to historical references of saying how I have carried you through, and I will continue to do so. I have done it, and I will do it again. And so Isaiah continues to present that information to answer those questions. God does not need to be carried, but he carries Israel, and that's an important thing for us to understand. There is the book of Isaiah regularly refers to a remnant, and so in verse 3 there, when it says all the remnant of the house of Israel, that's leading us into in here in just another chapter or two, we're going to start seeing them referred to as Zion. Zion is going to be the way that Isaiah refers to the remnant, from chapter 49 through 55. So, but it'll be that same group of people, those people who are the ones that God rescues from captivity. So there you go. On to the next section, verses 5 through 13. We'll finish out chapter 46. Says, to whom would you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we would be alike? Those who lavish gold from the purse and weigh silver on the scale. Hire a goldsmith, and he makes it into a god. They bow down, indeed they worship it. They lift it upon the shoulder and carry it. They set it in its place, and it stands there. It does not move from its place. Though no one may cry to it, or though one may cry to it, it cannot answer. It cannot deliver him from his distress. Remember this and be assured. Recall it to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things long past. For I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is no one like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. God, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man of my purpose, from a far country. Truly I have spoken, Truly I will bring it to pass. I have planned it, surely I will do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-minded, who are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness. It is not far off, and my salvation will not delay, and I will grant salvation in Zion, and my glory for Israel. So here this section titled Remembering the Things of Old, and again, God calling to mind things that he has done in the past as proof, as evidence of what he's going to do in the future. And that's a valid thing for God to do. And we still do that today. The things written aforetime are written for our learning. And so we still hang on to those thoughts that what God has done in the past is evidence for what he will do for us in the future. This is another instance where God, or Isaiah rather, uses trial imagery. We've talked about that through this section of Isaiah. Just over and over again, we see kind of a courtroom scene playing out. And when God is presenting evidence like that and saying, think about what I've done in the past, that's him testifying or him giving evidence of similar to what you would do in a courtroom to demonstrate what you will do in the future. So early on in this section, we go back a little bit, the early verses describe the manufacture of idols. And think about that for a second, that there were people who made, who made their living making idols. Even in New Testament times, once again, there was Alexander the coppersmith who Paul dealt with in Ephesus. And so we have people whose profession is to be idol makers. And just let that sink in, that they make copies of their gods that then have to be carried and delivered to people to set up in a place so that they can pray to that thing, hoping that that thing that has been made by man's hands will deliver them from whatever distress they're in. Teresa.
But the coppersmith, I wonder if he's just thinking, it's not any of my business what they do with it. I'm just making it. They've asked me to make it, and I'm just doing the work. He's making a living.
Well, there may have been some of them that were like that. Paul even addresses the idea that some people go around preaching the gospel, hoping that it will bring embarrassment on him. And so, Paul's basic attitude about that was, as long as the gospel is being preached, that's okay. But what a sorry state to exist in if you're preaching the gospel to try to embarrass somebody else and you're not really getting it for yourself. And so I would think that most of the ones who are involved in the idol making are doing it because it's their belief, it's what they're following after, not probably just artists doing artistic things. Tim.
Back up one. Another one.
Back up or forward up?
Where does it say about the Zion and the glory of Israel?
Oh, the Zion, the word Zion was at the end there.
Right, and my glory for Israel. That's what Simeon said.
I'm sorry?
That's what Simeon said whenever he held Jesus.
Yes.
Oh.
The salvation.
So Luke, is that Luke 2? Luke 2? Okay. I don't think I have that reference in here. Let's look that up real quick. That's awesome. Good catch. So in Luke chapter 2, when Mary and Joseph presented Jesus at the temple, and Simeon and Anna were both there, and so Simeon 32, there it is. So a light of revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of thy people Israel. My glory for Israel. Nice. I need to write that down. I don't have a pen. I'll get that later. That's good.
The only reason why I clicked the Song of Simeon.
The Song of Simeon, yeah.
That's what I've always loved that, right?
Yeah.
It's just pretty lucky that I caught
That's a good one. That's great. And so yeah, that's a quotation that Simeon uses, my glory for Israel. Okay. Which ties into that whole remnant and deliverance theme that Isaiah presents all the way through the book, that has that double, we've talked about the double fulfillment of a lot of the prophecies in Isaiah, where it meant something in the immediate context of the people who were living through it, but it also has been interpreted again by New Testament writers
He's just cranking up the messianic part of it.
Right.
Isaiah, it's just getting.
Yeah, we're just fixing to hit that part, aren't we? Yeah, the messianic part is on the way. So that's good. So back to the idols. You know, the idols are require a substantial financial investment. I like that in his notes. If you think about it, you know, somebody had to learn how to do it. They've got to buy the materials. Then the materials have to be forged and carved and all of those things. And then it has to be purchased by the one who wants the idol. And then they have to carry it. So you buy something that's supposed to be your God, and then you have to do the work. But then Isaiah argues that there's not much return on this investment. And that's more, I like that business language. The ROI is not very good. So they lift it up, they carry it, they set it in its place. And it stands there, it does not move from its place. So then he gets into we've talked about some of the difficulty of the language in Isaiah, sometimes especially when it comes to pronouns, figuring out what the antecedent of those pronouns are. And so he goes into a little bit here with in verse 8, remember this. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean remember the things I just talked about? Or does it or is it like I'm starting a new thought, remember this, and then we're going to delineate what that is. So the this, he says, seems to be the disparity between the Babylonian idols, which require great expense and must be carried and cannot speak or save, and the God of Israel, who carries them, speaks regularly and stands ready to serve. So it's that contrast between the gods of Babylon and the God and the true God, that difference, that disparity is what Isaiah is really bringing to memory, or to bring to mind. So remember this, remember how weak they are, remember how strong our God is. And then the second, says former things, which are verse 9. Remember the former things long past. The former things there refers to God's work in history of announcing events before they occur and then making them happen. None of those idols can do that. They can't announce it ahead of time, and they certainly can't make anything happen that they want to have happen. And so God is calling to mind all of these things, because what are we doing right here in Isaiah? We're announcing things 150 years before they happen. They're going to happen. And remember this. Remember what God has done. He's called it. He's called his shot. And it's going to happen, and you need to recognize it for what it is. Isaiah mentions at least 8 things that God does. You want to list any of those things real quick? Verse 10. Declares the end and the beginning. From ancient times, things which have not been done. He does things that no one else can do or has done. He establishes his own purpose. He accomplishes all his good pleasure. He calls a bird of prey from the east, and many see this as a reference to Cyrus coming from Persia, the east, that's going to be the one that overthrows Babylon. The man of my purpose from a far country. I have spoken, and I will bring it to pass. I have planned it, and I will do it. So all of these things, God is just listing all of these things as a contrast between what he does and what the idols are unable to do. This was interesting. 46:10 is a snapshot of the entire Bible. It's the Bible in miniature, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. So he says God announces and rules all things, God's word is true and is accomplished, and God's purpose, which includes salvation and redemption, is achieved. So that is kind of just a snapshot of the history of God's interaction with man. All right. See if there's anything else here. Looks good. I think we've covered it. Any other thoughts on 46? James.
Verse 9. Remember the former things I immediately thought to the Exodus out of Egypt, because all the plagues were representatives of Egyptian gods. It was God showing the Israelites that there is none like him, and that was just something that the Israelites would remember from their past. So that's could also be a callback to
Good.
that.
That's good. The ways in which God has interacted with the false gods of other nations that have held Israel captive is absolutely a valid point to bring up. And so the way that God dealt with the Egyptian gods, the way that God dealt with the Assyrian gods, the way that God dealt with the Canaanite gods, I mean, all of those along the way, and how God, the Amalekite gods, the Hittite gods, the Philistine gods, all along the way, God has demonstrated his superiority to those false gods. And so mentioning the former things would absolutely bring all of those to memory. Okay, the striking point of this section is that while Israel continues to resist, God continues to make plans to save them. He does it not for Israel's sake, but for the sake of his own glory. That part kind of hits home. God's going to do the right thing. God's going to do the thing that demonstrates his holiness, that demonstrates his power, that demonstrates his sovereignty, regardless of what anyone else does. And so whether or not the Israelites respond to it or accept it or listen to it, God's going to do it because he does it to honor himself, not to honor them. And so it's our job to get on board with what God's doing, not our job to try to get God on board with what we're doing. And that's an important lesson for them to understand. Maybe an important lesson for us to understand too, if I'm honest. Johnny.
If you remember back in the day, Moses would talk to God and tell him and say, hey, if you destroy us out here, it's going to make you look bad.
Right.
For you need to save us.
Right.
For your glory and for your honor and for the world to know that you are God, you need to not punish us.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a point at which God was ready to wipe everybody out and start over with Moses. And I don't know how that would work, but God had it figured out. And Moses said, if you do that, people are going to say bad things about you. And he was able to make that point in a way that honored God. And so that's right. God is going to be glorified no matter what. All right. Chapter 47 is the failure of Babylonian politics. Could we just give the word Babylonian and say the failure of politics?
Even failure of politics is oxymoron.
Just the failure. That's all we need. We don't even need the word politics. All right.
You can try either one.
Yeah. It's almost a double negative.
But that doesn't make it positive.
No, it does not. Okay. Rough crowd tonight. All right. Isaiah 47, 1 through 7. Change in circumstances. So, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called tender and delicate. Oops. Take the millstones and grind meal, remove your veil, strip off the skirt, uncover the leg, cross the rivers. Your nakedness will be uncovered, your shame also will be exposed. I will take vengeance and will not spare a man. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit silently and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you will no longer be called the Queen of Kingdoms. I was angry with my people, I profaned my heritage, and gave them into your hand. You did not show mercy to them. On the aged you made your yoke very heavy, yet you said, I will be a queen forever. These things you did not consider, nor remember the outcome of them. These verses describe the fall of Babylon, and they're very stark, they're very graphic. So and just as Jerusalem is used all through Isaiah to refer not just to the city, but to the entire nation, here we have the city of Babylon being named specifically, but it stands in place of the entire kingdom. And so Isaiah describes at least 8 changes in the circumstances of the Babylonian princess, and we can list those straight from the verses that we just read. The princess becomes a slave girl. She was sitting on a throne, but now she sits on the ground. She was tender, but she has become coarse. She was the one who was served meals made by others. Now she has to make her own meals. She was clothed in fine robes, but now she is naked. She was once carried over rivers, but now she has to wade through the river on her own. The things once hidden by her wealth are now exposed to all, and her light has become darkness. So kind of all of that imagery wrapped up in just the majesty of what was a tremendous kingdom in human terms, this Babylonian kingdom, but it's very quickly brought down once the kingdom falls. And so how does all of this change come about? If the circumstances have changed, who changed them? God. God is the one who changed them. I mean, God's the one who elevated them, and God is the one who has brought them low. And so, but why? Why does God, I mean...
Discipline?
They were doomed.
They were doomed.
Discipline?
Discipline. I think there's some discipline to it. Whose idea was it for Babylon to take out Israel? It was God's idea, right? So then Babylon comes along and takes out Israel. And what does God do to Babylon because they took out Israel? He takes out Babylon. Okay? Okay, what do you want to say? Go ahead.
But God knew their hearts.
Yeah. So, so something interesting. Let's see, where is it? Okay, verse 6. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage and gave them into your hand. I mean, think about all the things that are wrapped up in that statement that God is making. God's, based on my anger with my people, I profaned my own heritage. I took the people that I had made promises to, and I took those promises away. Kind of. I mean, he followed through on the promises he made about what he would do if they didn't follow him. So he kept those promises about destruction, but that wasn't the promise he wanted to keep, was it? He wanted to keep the promise of blessing, right? He wanted to keep the promise of establishing a nation that would last forever. That's what he wanted to do, but he told them what had happened if they sinned. I'll have to ignore that promise and I'll have to do this promise instead. I don't want to do that, but that's what I'll have to do. And so I profaned my heritage. I did what I didn't want to do. And I gave them into your hand. This was never what I intended, never what I hoped would happen. And when I gave them into your hand, what did you do? You didn't show mercy. You didn't recognize that they were my people. You didn't recognize that they were my children under my protection, under my promise.
Yeah, so they didn't do it God's way.
And so because you have treated my people badly, you're going to be taken out. That's it. So you did not show mercy to them. On the aged, you made your yoke very heavy. You said, I will be a queen forever. What does that mean? They said, I will be a queen forever. What did they think? Their kingdom would never get. Where did their power come from? Where did they think their power came from?
They thought it came from there.
They thought they came from their gods or from themselves. What is it that Nebuchadnezzar finally, when he's brought low in Daniel, what does he stand there and say? Look at this kingdom that I have built. And he didn't recognize that it was God, and he went out and ate grass for 7 years. Right? Okay, so this is God stepping up and saying, I gave them into your hand, but you were supposed to show restraint. You were supposed to not be this mean. And they were. And so now God says, you're going to be punished. And, where's Babylon today? Buried under a bunch of sand. So these things you did not consider nor remember the outcome of them. So God, can God act? Does he care? Yeah. I mean, he's demonstrating that. And so he's giving his people hope even in the midst of their captivity. He's saying Babylon is going to be taken out. They're going to be brought low. And they're going to be brought low because of the way they treated you. So this is hopeful stuff for the Israelites. Okay, we got to move on. All right. These verses describe the fall of Babylon. We already talked about that. So let's wrap up chapter 47, verses 8 through 15. Now then hear this, you sensual one, who dwells securely, who says in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. I will not sit as a widow, nor know loss of children. But these two things will come on you suddenly in one day, loss of children and widowhood. They will come on you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries, in spite of the great power of your spells. You felt secure in your wickedness and said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge, they have deluded you. For you have said in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. But evil will come on you, which you will not know how to charm away, and disaster will fall on you, for which you cannot atone. And destruction about which you do not know will come on you suddenly. Stand fast now in your spells and in your many sorceries, with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to profit. Perhaps you may cause trembling. You are wearied with your many counsels. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars, those who predict by the new moons, stand up and save you from what will come upon you. Behold, they have become like stubble. Fire burns them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame, nor will there will be no coal to warm by, nor a fire to sit before. So have those become to you with whom you have labored, who have trafficked with you from your youth. Each has wandered in his own way. There is none to save you. Wow. Who wants to be the recipient of those verses? Don't sign me up for that.
I just keep thinking about in modern terms today, people live their lives of wanton pleasure, whatever that means for them. And in the end, and then still think that God should be there when they're at the end of their lives, even though they've never called on Him.
Yeah.
God, in the Old Testament, He disciplined people while they were still on earth. Now, we get disciplined now, but we need to understand that now, today is the time of salvation.
Yeah.
And it's
Well said. I mean, we've got to do things God's way, and God is here clearly railing against the Babylonians for doing things their way rather than His way. So Isaiah here lists a bunch of qualities of ancient Babylon, which God now is going to remove. He's going to take these aspects of Babylonian culture, and He's going to undo those things. So this section, I could only get one verse per slide, so it took a lot of slides. The idea of they love pleasure, you sensual one, you dwell securely, that's the pursuit of pleasure. You live securely in that pleasure, and you think everything's always going to continue that way. You think it's always going to be that way. Jesus talked about that way, or about that, where the guy had, he was going to tear down his barns and build bigger ones because he had all that he ever needed. And so, tonight your soul is required of it. And so they're putting their faith, their trust in their stuff, in their ability to take care of themselves, and they are not giving credit where credit is due. And this phrase is repeated a couple times, this idea that I am and there is no one besides me. We saw that back there in, you said I will be a queen forever. I am and there is no one besides me. And there's another time or two through this reading that that is the attitude that is being portrayed. But who is it that has the right to say that? Only God is the one that has the right to say that. So if you look back, and I don't have these verses up here, but if you look back at Isaiah 45, verse 21, so this was in last week's, or covered over the last 2 weeks in that section. So 45:21 says, "Declare and set forth your case, indeed let them consult together. Who has announced this from of old? Who has long since declared it? Is it not I, the Lord, and there is no other God besides me, a righteous God and a Savior, there is none except me." And then again in 46:9, "Remember the former things long past, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is no one like me." So in their attitude, in their mind, they were establishing themselves as God. You know, I am self-existent. My kingdom will sustain itself because I am so powerful. And so they had this this attitude that they were their own gods, and God, well, He can't let that stand. He's got to bring that to an end. So so that's what He does. Chuck.
I was thinking, didn't back during the kingdom of Israel, during the later kings, I was thinking that this was something that was said about them, about Israel, the Israel kingdom, the later kings, that they were saying, you know, that I'm secure, you know, I want to sit as I was thinking that was something that was previously said about the Israel kingdom.
I'm trying to remember that, and I can't form a memory of that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I mean, because they were pretty arrogant.
There were, especially the northern kingdom, if we're talking about, you know, the ones like Ahab and some of those that were very arrogant in the way that they viewed themselves. It fits with their attitude, whether or not they outright said it sometimes. The idea of sometimes we're not brazen enough to say the things to say the words that represent our own actions or our own thoughts or our own hearts. We just live that way and let our actions speak for themselves, but we don't so brazenly say the words. And so that may be the case. I'll have to think about that. I'm not thinking of any examples off the top of my head of Israelite kings that said those things. So that one final thought, especially as we relate this back to those. This section is about the failure of Babylonian politics, which gets into culture and it gets into their just their way of life and things like that. But it's all tied back to the theology, right? So who was Nebo? He was their god of writing, and their writing is what represented kind of those scientific and cultural advancements that the Babylonian culture had made. And so we see through this section God specifically addressing some of those things. Like in verse 10, he talks about your wisdom and your knowledge have deluded you. And so this God of writing that you say has blessed you with this advancement, you have fallen victim to hubris. I mean, it's your own wisdom and knowledge has led you down the wrong path. Because that's what has led you to this, to come to the conclusion that I am and there's no one besides me. There's no culture greater than ours. Nobody is as advanced as we are, and so we must be the best thing there is. I guess there's no other culture that's ever done that before. Okay. He also talks about their enchantments and their sorceries, which are things that we wouldn't normally think of being as advancements because we don't buy into the sorceries and enchantments and what's that word? Wizardry and all that stuff. It's fanciful. It's, makes for a good book or movie or something, but we don't believe in it. But they believed in it. They saw it as a sign of their advanced culture. Think about, again, kind of in the time frame that Isaiah is writing about, when Daniel is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar having the dream, and he brings in the soothsayers and the magicians to tell him what the dream was. And they're trying to figure out how to do that because they don't know how to interpret a dream, let alone tell him what the dream was without him telling them. So, but they really believed in all that. And so God is dealing with those things here. And those are the things that God is using as an example of how he's going to bring them low. Okay, so that gets us to the end of chapter 47. Isaiah announces to Israel, I've got to get to the end. There we go. Isaiah continually contrasts God with the idols of Babylon, or their modern day idols. American Idol. That's a show, isn't it? America's Idols? What would be America's Idols?
Anything that we put before God, you know, or.
That's a Sunday school answer. Anything we put before God is an idol. Yes, that's true, but I want name names. I want specifics.
What?
Pleasure. Power, money.
Well, we're doing the same thing in this country in that we're replacing what God has said is righteousness and love and what it's supposed to be, and we're doing those things like they were doing with their witchcraft and all of that. We're taking evil stuff, pushing God aside and saying, look how great we are because we accept this. We can do this. And it's nothing but evil and putting God aside.
Okay. Yes. And so I think what is the idol that, I mean, they had their idols. They had Bel, they had Nebo, they had all these, but who is it that they were putting in the driver's seat? Themselves. And I think
we do the same thing.
I think that's I think for us it would be, I would not dream of putting an idol anywhere in my house or anything like that, but do I sometimes put my own desires and wants and needs and all of those things ahead of what I know is right or ahead of what I know God wants me to do? Well, absolutely, because I'm human and I do those things, and so that's putting me in the position of the idol. That's putting me in the position of God when that's not where I should be.
You seek only what you want to do and what makes you feel good, rather than what does God want from me? What does He want me to do?
Yes.
What kind of life does He want me to live?
Mm-hmm.
It's, in one word, it's pride.
Pride.
Always.
It is hubris. Absolutely. Next week, Isaiah 48. Thank you for your attention.